Fifth, and this is crucial, we need to demand action from our governments. I know. Politicians seem useless. They don't understand technology. They're captured by corporate lobbies. But friends, they respond to pressure. When enough people make enough noise about something, things change. Demand real data privacy laws with teeth. Breaking up tech monopolies that have too much power. Banning data sales to foreign entities. Transparency requirements for algorithms. Criminal penalties for executives who lie about data practices. Will it happen overnight? No. Will it solve everything? No. But silence guarantees nothing changes. Your voice matters. Not because one person can change the system, but because when millions of people start demanding the same thing, politicians start to worry about their jobs. And when they worry about their jobs, they act. Finally, we need to think about the kids. Because the generation growing up right now, they don't remember life before smartphones. They don't know what it's like to not be surveilled. They think this digital panopticon is normal. And if we don't teach them otherwise, they'll never question it. Teach your kids how to recognize manipulation, why privacy matters, how to think critically about online content, the value of face-to-face human connection, that their worth isn't determined by likes and views. These aren't just life skills anymore, friends. These are survival skills in a world where psychological warfare is being conducted through memes and social media posts. Here's the thing about this silent war. The enemy isn't trying to defeat you militarily. They're trying to make you defeat yourself through division, distraction, and despair. So, every time you question the content you're seeing, have a real conversation instead of an online argument. Choose knowledge over outrage. Build real community instead of digital echo chambers. Take action instead of just scrolling. You're winning. Not winning in some dramatic Hollywood way. Winning in the way that actually matters. Taking back control over your own mind. Friends, I started this video by telling you about a war. A silent war for control of your data, your attention, and ultimately your thoughts. But here's what I want you to understand. This war is only invisible if you don't know to look for it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you understand the game, you can stop playing by their rules. Will you ever be completely free of this system? No. Not unless you want to live off-grid with no technology. That's not realistic for most people. But you can be free enough, aware enough, protected enough. You can reclaim enough of your mental space that you start thinking your own thoughts again, instead of thoughts that were implanted by algorithms. And friends, there's power in that. Real power. The kind that can't be taken away by any government or corporation. Because at the end of the day, they can collect your data. They can manipulate your feed. They can target you with propaganda. But they can only control you if you let them. So here's where we are. You now know things that most people don't. You've seen behind the curtain. You understand the systems at play. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. You can close this video, go back to scrolling, and pretend you never learned any of this. Or you can decide that today is the day you start taking back control. Start small. One app deleted. One privacy setting changed. One real conversation with a real person. Because, friends, revolutions don't start with armies. They start with individuals deciding they've had enough. And if enough individuals make that decision, if enough people wake up to what's happening, if enough voices start demanding change, then maybe, just maybe, we can win this war. Not by defeating some foreign enemy, but by refusing to let anyone, foreign or domestic, turn us into tools for their own power. Friends, thank you for staying with me through this journey. I know it was heavy. I know it was dark at times. But I also hope it was empowering. Because the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is always better than comfortable lies. If this video opened your eyes, hit that like button. Share it with people you care about. Subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep uncovering the truths they don't want you to see. And most importantly, leave a comment. Tell me, did you already suspect this was happening? Are you going to change any of your digital habits? What's the first step you're going to take? Because friends, awareness is the first step. But action is what changes the game. The war is silent. But our response doesn't have to be. Stay aware. Stay connected. And never stop questioning. Until next time, friends, keep fighting the good fight. So when a foreign power wants to know which Americans are most vulnerable to recruitment, most likely to believe misinformation, or most useful for influencing, all they need is access to these scoring systems. And friends, they have that access. But let me tell you about the threat that keeps intelligence officials up at night. Something they call the kill switch scenario. Imagine this. A significant portion of American infrastructure, power grids, water systems, transportation networks, runs on software and hardware with components made in countries that aren't exactly American allies. Now imagine that buried in that code, invisible to inspectors, are backdoors. Remote access points that could be activated at any time. In a crisis, in a conflict, or just as a demonstration of power, what happens if those backdoors open? What happens if traffic lights all go red? If power grids fail? If water treatment plants shut down? You don't need to drop bombs when you can turn off the lights. This isn't science fiction. In 2015, hackers linked to Russia shut down parts of Ukraine's power grid. In 2021, a ransomware attack shut down a major American oil pipeline. And these were relatively unsophisticated attacks. What keeps officials awake is the thought of coordinated, state-sponsored attacks using access that's already built into the systems. Access that can't be easily removed because it's woven into the code at the most fundamental levels. One former DHS official told me, "We're driving cars where someone else installed the steering wheel. And we're just hoping they never decide to take control." So friends, you might be thinking, okay, this is terrifying, but I'm just a regular person. Why would anyone care about my data? And that's exactly what they want you to think. Because you're not being targeted individually. You're being targeted as part of a collective. Your data alone isn't valuable. But your data combined with millions of others creates a map of society that can be manipulated at scale. They don't need to control you. They need to control the information environment around you. Control what you see, and they control what you think. Control what you think, and they control what you do. And the beautiful, horrible genius of it is that you'll believe you came to those conclusions yourself. That you made those choices freely. That you believed those things because they were true. But friends, in a world where your information diet is curated by algorithms designed to manipulate you, how do you know what's real anymore? In the final section, we're going to talk about what can be done. Not what governments should do, they're already too compromised. But what you can do
right now, today,
to take back some control over your mind, your data, and your future. Because friends, this war might be silent, but the fight isn't over. Friends, we've gone deep into this darkness. We've seen the systems. We've examined the evidence. We've understood the threat. And I know some of you are feeling overwhelmed, maybe even hopeless. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. The system is powerful, but it's not invincible. It has weaknesses. And those weaknesses are you. See, the entire model depends on one thing: your participation. You feeding it data. You staying on the platforms. You believing the content. You staying divided and distracted. The moment you stop participating the way they want, the system starts to crack. Let me show you how. The first and most powerful tool you have is simply knowing this is happening. I'm serious. Awareness itself is a defense. Studies show that when people are told they're being manipulated, the manipulation becomes significantly less effective. It's like a magic trick. Once you know how it's done, you can't be fooled by it anymore. So the fact that you've watched this far means you're already less vulnerable than you were 20 minutes ago. You're now watching for the manipulation. You're questioning the content. You're aware of the game being played. That's not nothing. That's everything. But awareness alone isn't enough. You need to act. And the first action is the hardest one. Reduce your exposure. I'm not saying delete every app and go live in a cave. I'm saying be strategic about what you give them. Ask yourself, do I need this app, or do I just use it out of habit? Does this platform add value to my life, or does it just make me angry and anxious? Is this content informing me, or is it programming me? Start small. Delete one app that you know is designed to be addictive. You know which one I'm talking about. The one you open without thinking. The one that steals hours of your day. The one that leaves you feeling worse than when you started. Delete it for just 1 week.
See what happens.
You know what you'll notice? How much clearer your mind becomes. How much more time you have. How much less angry you feel about things that don't actually affect your life. That's not coincidence. That's the algorithm's hold on you loosening. Second, take back control of your data. It's not as hard as tech companies want you to believe. Simple steps. Use a VPN when browsing. Makes your location harder to track. Switch to privacy-focused browsers like Brave or Firefox. Use encrypted messaging apps like Signal instead of standard SMS. Turn off microphone access for apps that don't absolutely need it. Use email aliases so your real email isn't connected to every account. Pay for services instead of using free versions. If you're not paying, you're the product. Will this make you invisible?
No.
But it makes you expensive to track. And when you're expensive to track, automated systems move on to easier targets. Third, curate your information sources carefully. The algorithm wants to feed you content that keeps you engaged, which usually means content that makes you emotional, angry, afraid, or outraged. So you need to actively seek out boring, factual, well-researched information. I know it's not as exciting, but that's the point. Subscribe to a real newspaper. Not the clickbait version on social media, the actual paper. Read books written by experts, not influencers. Listen to long-form podcasts with actual depth. Train yourself to distinguish between information designed to inform and content designed to inflame. Here's a simple test. If something makes you immediately want to share it out of anger or shock, pause. That emotional response was engineered. Wait 24 hours. See if you still think it's worth sharing after the emotion fades. Most of the time, you won't. But friends, individual action isn't enough. We need to think collectively. Talk to people in real life. I mean actual face-to-face conversations. About real things. Not political debates designed to divide us, but genuine human connection about shared concerns. Because here's what the data manipulators fear most. People forming real community bonds that can't be mediated through screens. Relationships that exist outside the digital panopticon where every interaction is monitored. When you have real community, you have a defense network. People who can reality check information. Friends who can pull you back when you're falling down a rabbit hole. Family who reminds you what actually matters. The algorithm can't touch that. A leaked memo from a Meta executive in 2021 admitted this plainly. To maintain market access in Asia-Pacific, certain data sharing protocols are non-negotiable. Legal has advised that user consent frameworks adequately cover disclosure requirements. Translation? We know we're giving them access to user data, but technically it's legal because nobody reads the fine print. And when journalists asked these companies directly, "Are you sharing American user data with Chinese-linked entities?" the answers were always the same. Carefully worded non-denials. We comply with all applicable laws. User privacy is our top priority. We don't provide data to foreign governments. Notice what they don't say? They don't say, we don't share data with foreign companies that are legally required to hand it over to foreign governments. That's the loophole big enough to drive a surveillance state through. Once you know what to look for, you see this pattern everywhere. Apps that seem free but collect absurd amounts of data. Smart devices that listen even when they're off. Social media platforms that somehow show you ads for things you only thought about but never searched for. That's not coincidence. That's not even just good advertising. That's real-time behavioral analysis powered by AI systems that know you better than you know yourself. And the scariest part? It's legal. All of it. Because the laws were written in the 1990s when the internet was young, and no one imagined what it would become. Friends, we're living in a world where the rules were written for a game that no longer exists. And the players who understand the new game are running circles around everyone else. In the next section, we're going to talk about what this means for you personally, not in some abstract future.
Right now. Today.
And I'm going to show you exactly how to tell if you're already caught in the web. Friends, let me ask you something. Have you ever had this experience? You're talking to someone about a product, let's say a vacuum cleaner or a specific brand of shoes. You never search for it. You never type it anywhere. You just have a conversation. And then, within hours, maybe even minutes, ads for that exact product start appearing on your social media feeds. Most people chalk this up to coincidence or the algorithm is just good. But friends, it's neither. Your devices are listening. Not all the time, but enough of the time. And not just listening, processing, analyzing, and categorizing everything they hear. But that's just the surface level. Let me show you how deep the rabbit hole actually goes. Right now, there's a file about you. Not one file, actually. Dozens. Hundreds, depending on how active you are online. These files exist on servers scattered across the world, and they contain a version of you that's eerily accurate. This profile knows your political leanings based on what you pause to read, your insecurities based on what products you search for, your relationships based on who you message and when, your location patterns based on where your phone travels, your health concerns based on your search history, your financial situation based on your browsing and purchase behavior, your emotional state based on your typing patterns and word choices. I'm not speculating. This is documented capability of modern data analytic systems. A study by Cambridge University researchers in 2019 showed that AI systems could predict your personality traits more accurately than your coworkers after analyzing just 10 Facebook likes. After 70 likes, it knew you better than your friends. After 150 likes, better than your family. And after 300 likes, better than your spouse. Now multiply that by every interaction you've ever had online, every video watched, every article read, every comment written. That's not a profile anymore. That's a digital twin, a copy of your mind that exists in data form. And friends, here's what makes this truly dangerous. That digital twin can be tested on,
Experimented with.
manipulated to see what makes it change its mind, buy a product, or believe a conspiracy. And once they figure out what works on your digital twin, they know exactly what will work on the real you. Let me tell you about something called A/B testing. It's a common practice in tech. Companies show different versions of an app or website to different users to see which one performs better. Sounds harmless, right? Just improving user experience. But what happens when A/B testing isn't about button colors or font sizes? What happens when it's about testing which news headlines make you more angry? Which political messages make you more extreme? Which conspiracy theories you're most likely to believe? That's not hypothetical. That's happening. In 2014, Facebook admitted to conducting emotional manipulation experiments on nearly 700,000 users without their knowledge. They wanted to see if showing people more negative content would make them post more negative content themselves. The result?
Yes.
It worked. Emotional states are contagious through social media, which means if someone wants to make a population more anxious, more divided, or more angry, they just need to control what that population sees. Facebook apologized after the backlash, said they'd never do it again. But here's the thing, friends. They only apologized because they got caught. And they only got caught because a researcher published the findings. How many experiments are running right now that haven't been published? How many tests are being conducted by companies that don't answer to American regulators? Nobody knows. And that's the point. You've probably heard about China's social credit system. The one where the government tracks citizens' behavior and gives them scores that affect what they can buy, where they can travel, and what opportunities they get. Most Americans hear that and think, thank God that could never happen here. Friends, I have bad news. It's already happening. Just not by the government. By corporations. Your credit score already determines what loans you can get. Your social media behavior already determines what jobs you can have. Many employers scan social media before hiring. Your online purchases already determine what prices you see, dynamic pricing based on your profile. Your location history already determines what insurance rates you pay. We don't call it a social credit system. We call it personalization and risk assessment. But the function is the same. Your behavior is being monitored, scored, and used to determine your opportunities. And here's the terrifying part. These systems are being built by companies that have proven, repeatedly, that they'll share data with whoever pays for it or whoever has legal power to demand it. This is what I call the dependency trap. The same trap Russia fell into with China during the Ukraine war. But instead of weapons and oil, It's technology and data. And just like with Russia, every day that passes, the trap gets tighter. So when American politicians say they want to ban TikTok or restrict Chinese tech, they run into a wall. Not just a political wall, an economic one, a technological one. Because decades of outsourcing and integration have created a system where separating becomes almost impossible. And friends, here's the part that should terrify you. This isn't about one app or one company. This is about an entire ecosystem that's been built quietly and patiently over 20 years. An ecosystem designed to do one thing: collect everything, know everything, and control everything. Put these 4 layers together, and you start to see the real picture. This isn't just data collection. This is infrastructure for control. Infrastructure that's already in place, already operational, and already working. So when people ask, why doesn't the government just stop this? The answer is devastatingly simple. Because by the time they realized what was being built, it was already too late to dismantle without causing massive disruption. And that's exactly how you win a war, without fighting. You don't conquer territory. You become so embedded in your enemy's society that removing you would hurt them more than it would hurt you. Friends, in the next section, we're going to dive into the evidence. The leaked documents, the whistleblower testimonies, the internal memos that prove this isn't paranoia. This is policy. And once you see the proof, you'll never look at your phone the same way again. Friends, now that you understand the strategy, let's talk about the proof. Because I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds too big, too coordinated, too conspiracy-like to be real. And I get it. It does sound that way. Until you see the documents. In 2023, something extraordinary happened. A data engineer working for a major social media platform, I won't name them yet, but you use their app every day, walked out with thousands of pages of internal communications. Not stolen, not hacked. Downloaded legally from systems he had access to as part of his job. What he found wasn't just concerning. It was a blueprint, a literal instruction manual on how foreign intelligence services were accessing user data, not through illegal hacking, but through legitimate business partnerships, data sharing agreements, and legal loopholes built into the privacy policies no one ever reads. Let me read you just one excerpt from those documents. This is real, friends. Verified by multiple cybersecurity experts. Bulk data requests processed through secondary servers. Third-party verification waived for Category 3 partnerships. User consent implied through Section 12.4 of Terms of Service. Data includes behavioral patterns, social graphs, location history, and predictive models. Translation? They're collecting everything about you, sharing it with partners you've never heard of, and your consent was that thing you clicked agree to without reading. But it gets worse. In late 2022, a former NSA analyst named Marcus Chin gave a presentation to a closed-door congressional committee. In that presentation, he revealed something that made several senators walk out of the room. He showed them a map. Not a map of countries or territories. A map of data flows. Red lines showing where American user data was actually being stored, processed, and analyzed. The lines didn't end in California. They didn't end in Virginia. They ended in Shenzhen, in Shanghai, in Moscow, in cities where American law doesn't reach, and where foreign intelligence agencies operate freely. Marcus Chin told that committee, "We're not facing a potential threat. We're facing an operational reality. Foreign powers have real-time access to the digital nervous system of American society." 3 weeks after that testimony, Marcus Chin disappeared from public view. His social media went dark. His speaking engagements were canceled. And when journalists tried to reach him, they were told he'd taken a private sector position and couldn't comment on sensitive matters. That's not suspicious. That's a pattern. But maybe the most disturbing evidence comes from internal testing documents leaked from TikTok's parent company, ByteDance. In 2021, researchers inside ByteDance ran experiments. They wanted to know, how fast could they shift public opinion on a controversial topic using only algorithmic manipulation? No fake news. No bots. Just carefully controlling what content users saw and in what order. The results? Terrifying. They could shift opinion on political topics by an average of 23% in just 10 days. They could make people more anxious about their appearance in 6 days. They could increase political polarization by 31% in 2 weeks. And friends, here's the kicker. These weren't experiments on small groups. These were tests run on millions of real users who had no idea they were part of a psychological experiment. When these documents leaked, ByteDance denied everything, said the documents were taken out of context and didn't represent company policy. But 3 separate cybersecurity firms verified the documents were genuine. And more importantly, the mathematical models described in those papers matched exactly what independent researchers were seeing in the wild. The algorithms were doing precisely what the leaked documents said they were designed to do. Here's where the story gets even stranger. Because Western governments knew about this. They had intelligence. They had warnings. So why didn't they act? I spoke to a former policy advisor who worked on tech regulation. He told me something I'll never forget. We tried. We wrote reports. We briefed senators. We showed them the evidence. And you know what happened? Nothing. Because the moment you try to regulate these companies or block these apps, you get hit from every direction. Tech lobbyists say you're killing innovation. Free speech advocates say you're becoming like China. And scariest of all, the public gets angry because you're taking away their favorite apps. He paused, then added, democracies aren't built to fight wars where the battlefield is inside people's phones and the weapons are things that make them feel good. And that, friends, is the genius of this strategy. They've created a weapon that people defend. A surveillance system that users voluntarily carry everywhere. An influence machine that feels like entertainment. But let's talk about the American companies that enabled this. Because they're not innocent bystanders. Google, Meta, Apple, Microsoft, all of them have partnerships, data sharing agreements, and supply chain relationships with Chinese companies that have documented links to state intelligence services. Now, before you say, but they have to do business globally, let me tell you what's different here. These aren't just business deals. These are architecture-level integrations. Code-level access. The kind of partnerships where one side can see exactly what the other side is building, collecting, and doing. Tonight, we're going to uncover something that will shake everything you thought you knew about the modern world. A war that's happening right now. Not with bullets or bombs, but with something far more powerful. Something that's already inside your home, your pocket, your life. Imagine this. While politicians argue about borders and militaries prepare for battles, there's another conflict raging. A silent invasion. One that doesn't make headlines, doesn't trigger alarms, and doesn't spill blood in the streets. But make no mistake, friends, this war is real. And right now, America is losing. Here's what makes this story absolutely terrifying. The weapon being used isn't a missile or a tank. It's data. Your data. Every search you make, every video you watch, every message you send. All of it is being collected, analyzed, and weaponized. Not by hackers in dark rooms, but by foreign governments building the most sophisticated control system humanity has ever seen. And then comes the twist that changes everything. The companies helping them do this? They're American. The platforms you trust? They're the delivery system. The apps you can't live without? They're the Trojan horses. And the most shocking part? Your own government knows about it but can't stop it. Because, friends, what I'm about to reveal isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a documented reality that tech giants, intelligence agencies, and foreign powers are desperately trying to keep quiet. Tonight, we're going to expose the truth they don't want you to see. So the question we're answering isn't, could this happen? The question is, why is no one talking about the fact that it's already happening? Friends, stay with me till the very end, because what you're about to learn will change how you see your phone, your computer, and the invisible war being fought for control of your mind. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment telling me if you've ever felt like something was watching you through your screen. Because after tonight, you'll know you were right all along. Let's pull back the curtain on the war that's being fought in silence. Friends, to understand this war, we need to go back to a moment most people have forgotten. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a speech. It was a quiet meeting in Beijing in 2017. A meeting where Chinese officials laid out a plan so ambitious, so unprecedented, that Western intelligence agencies initially dismissed it as fantasy. The plan was simple. Don't invade countries. Don't conquer territory. Instead, conquer minds. They realized something that military generals never understood. In the 21st century, the country that controls information doesn't just win wars, it prevents them from ever starting. It shapes what people believe, what they fear, what they want, and who they trust. And the genius of their strategy? They would use democracy's own tools against itself. Freedom of speech, open internet, social media platforms. All the things that make Western society strong would become the very weapons used to tear them apart. So, how does this actually work? Let me break it down into what I call the 4 layers of the silent war. Right now, as you watch this video, thousands of data points are being collected about you. What time you clicked, how long you stayed, whether you paused or scrolled, what other videos you watched before this,
What you'll watch after.
Every single one of those actions is valuable. Not because anyone cares about you specifically, but because when you combine your data with millions of others, patterns emerge. Patterns that reveal how populations think, what they fear, and most importantly, how they can be manipulated. Chinese-owned apps alone, TikTok being the most obvious, are collecting data from over 150 million Americans every single day. That's not an exaggeration. That's a documented fact. But here's what most people don't realize. It's not just TikTok. Hundreds of apps, many of them you use daily, have Chinese investment, Chinese ownership, or Chinese access built into their code. Gaming apps, VPN services, weather apps, even productivity tools. Each one is a sensor, feeding information back to databases that your government can't access, can't monitor, and can't shut down. But collecting data is just the beginning. That's like gathering ingredients. The real danger comes from what they cook with it. Here's where it gets truly frightening. Once you have enough data, you can predict behavior. You can know what makes someone angry before they even see the content. You can identify which topics will divide communities. You can find the exact emotional trigger that turns a rational person into someone who believes conspiracy theories. And then you can deploy that knowledge through algorithms. Not random algorithms, friends. Targeted, weaponized algorithms designed to maximize one thing: chaos. Think about how TikTok works in China versus how it works in America. In China, the algorithm promotes educational content, science videos, patriotic messages, and skill-building tutorials. It's designed to make Chinese youth smarter, more united, more productive. But in America, the algorithm promotes outrage, division,
Conspiracy.
body image issues, political extremism. Anything that keeps you scrolling, keeps you angry, keeps you distracted and divided. That's not an accident. That's psychological warfare. Western intelligence officials have a term for this. They call it cognitive capture. It's when you think you're making your own choices, but actually, an invisible system is guiding every decision you make. But data and algorithms are just tools. The real question is, what are they building? The answer is a network of influence that spans the entire globe. Think about it. If you can shape what millions of people believe, you don't need to invade their country. You can make them destroy it themselves. Here's how it works in practice. Let's say there's a political election coming up. Country X wants candidate A to win because candidate A will be weak on their interests. So what do? They don't donate to campaigns. They don't send spies. Instead, they flood social media with content. Not obviously fake content. Subtle content. Memes that make candidate B look weak. Videos that question candidate B's health. Stories that make candidate B's supporters seem extreme or dangerous. And because the algorithms are designed to amplify outrage, that content spreads. Real people share it. Real people believe it. Real people vote based on it. And country X never fired a single shot. This isn't theory, friends. This happened in 2016. It happened in 2020. And according to leaked intelligence reports, it's happening right now, in dozens of countries, every single day. But here's the final, most terrifying layer. Even when Western governments realize what's happening, they can't stop it.
Why?
Because we're already dependent. American companies rely on Chinese manufacturing for their hardware. European nations rely on Chinese-owned infrastructure for their 5G networks. Developing countries rely on Chinese loans and Chinese technology to build their digital economies. It's like discovering your house is bugged, but you can't remove the bugs because they're also holding up the walls.